Hey everyone, I'm Mind, and in this video I'm going to be comparing a bunch of the different LEGO mechs that came out in January 2024 from a few different themes. You can see I've got Marvel over here, then LEGO City, then of course the main focus here is Ninjago, and finally Sonic the Hedgehog on the end. Marvel had 2 mechs, City had 1, Sonic had 1, and Ninjago had 4, but these are all within a similar price range. Some are a little more expensive than the others, but I thought it would be neat to take a look at them all here because they're all very similar in some ways, but each theme does do things differently. I am only focusing on small mechs in this video. I know Monkey Kid has 2 bigger mechs coming out, one I think is $55 and the other one's $100, and I will be reviewing those stuff on this channel, but considering most of these mechs are $10 to $20, I didn't think it was right to include the Monkey Kid stuff in here. The Ninjago mechs in this video were gifted to me by LEGO for review, but all the other ones I believe I bought myself. And of course the point of this video is the comparison, so I won't be reviewing each of the sets in detail. I already have 4 reviews up of all the Ninjago mechs as well as the Sonic mech, and I am planning to review the City mech. I have no plans to review the Marvel mechs individually right now, but if you guys do want to see that, let me know in the comments. So I think the first thing to compare with all these is the price point and what you actually get in the sets. The Marvel mechs are both $14.99 in the US, the Venom mech comes with 2 minifigures, the War Machine mech only comes with 1, and those are sort of in between the price of the Ninjago mechs. You can see the small J mech right there, that one's $10 and comes with 4 minifigures, the Cole and Sora mechs are $20 and come with 2, and then the Kai mech in the middle is $30 and comes with 4, but that one also has a side build in the set which we won't be looking at in this video, even though I guess technically it is a mech too. But because Kai is like in a similar scale to Lloyd and Sora, I just wanted to focus on that one in this video. The City mech is $10.99 and comes with 1 minifigure, and the Knuckles mech is $34.99 and comes with 2 minifigures, as well as the side build, but the side build is very small. So now let's look at these up closer individually. Starting with the War Machine mech, I will say this is probably my favorite Marvel mech I've gotten. I've done a video similar to this twice. I did one for the Marvel mechs last year and one for the Star Wars mechs last year, and those, at least personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of. And this one I still don't love, don't get me wrong, like it's still far from my favorite. I think especially for $15 it feels a little silly, but I do have to say it does this entire mech building system a lot better than the previous Marvel mechs. I think it helps that War Machine's a very armored character, so translating his design into a mech just feels like it works. And I do love all the gunmetal gray used on this build. However, the issues that I've had with the Marvel mechs in the past still continue here. For one, I don't like these very flat feet. I think they're bad for posability, and they also just don't look the best. I much prefer the thicker feet that like Ninjago mechs use. For example, here's the J-mech for this wave, and even though obviously the entire mech's a lot smaller, you can see even in this small build, this foot's like significantly larger, it's not as flat, and I think that's just so much better for posing. I do like the texturing on the legs overall, it feels a little bit flat in some places, but like the shin right here looks really great. I will say it's still a shame that the Marvel mechs don't use the SCCBS armor pieces, because they switched to the SCCBS joints recently, which is a great part, I really love that part, but this armor piece was designed to go with those joints in the very first wave it came out, and I think it does a great job of communicating the idea of mech, but none of the Marvel mechs use it for some reason. Luckily, the Knuckles mech actually does on the arms, which that makes me very happy to see, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's get back to comparing the legs. Because now coming to the Venom mech, I think this one's fine. I don't like it as much as the War Machine mech. I will say I probably like it than some of the Marvel mechs last year, though I'm not sure actually. But yeah, once again, there's things I like that this does and things I don't like that this does. Once again, very flat feet. That is just what the Marvel mechs do. I do appreciate like the unique design to the front of the foot, but it really doesn't fix all too much for me. The legs feel very, very thin. I feel like it definitely needs some more bulk there. And the SCCBS piece here is dark gray, which I don't know if it fits Venom the best, because Venom's the character who's very much 2 colors. He's black and white. There's not much room for gray in that color scheme. So I kind of wish those joints had been one of those 2 colors instead. Maybe white joints and then cover them up more with more black pieces. I think that could have looked really good, but instead this looks really thin, and the color, like, it's fine, don't get me wrong, but it's far from the best looking thing. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Comparing those to the Ninjago mechs of this wave, and the difference is night and day. Now some of you might be saying, hey, that's not fair, these mechs are in different scales, which yes, I agree is true. However, the price difference between these 2 mechs is only $5. So if the Marvel mechs are really small for the price, that's Marvel's fault, not Ninjago's. Ninjago gave us great sized mechs for the price, so I am still absolutely going to compare these two. But yeah, you can see Sora here is like meant to be the agile one. So her legs aren't like super bulky and armored, but even still, they don't feel like flat. It feels like there's the right amount of texture to them, the smooth parts are meant to be smooth. Well, to me, the legs on this mech feel like there's something missing. And as I mentioned earlier, I much prefer the design of the feet on these mechs. It's just better for posing, there's so much more personality. I also like how each Ninjago mech does its own thing too, they're not like all exactly the same but recolors. Cole's feet are entirely different, and they're actually kind of flat, somewhat similar to Marvel, but even still, this works so much better than the Marvel feet. Also, I really love this new knee pad part, again another textured armor piece in the SCCBS family. I really wish other themes leaned into that more, because it does so much to make this actually feel like a mech. Kai's kind of a bridge between the 2 we just looked at. There is some gappiness in the legs around the back, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I wish that was covered up a little bit more, but I also don't think it's the biggest deal, because this does look really good from from the front. And of course, to keep things fair, I'm not just gonna look at the mechs that are $5 more than the Marvel mechs, I'll also look at the mech that's $5 less than the Marvel mechs. And obviously this is very, very, very simple, much more simple than the Marvel mechs. And if this was the same as the Marvel mechs where they both came with 1 or 2 minifigures, I would be tearing into this one a little bit harder. But this is $10 and comes with 4 minifigures. The Marvel mechs we're looking at are $15 and come with 1 or 2. So yes, this mech's smaller and a lot simpler, but the price of this set doesn't entirely come from the mech, and it's a very cheap set. Still though, I prefer the design on these feet to the way the Marvel mechs do it. Then coming to LEGO City with the legs and the feet, this is once again closer to the Ninjago approach. They don't actually use the SCCBS joints here, which is a cool touch. Obviously lots of mechs don't use them, but they've kind of become the default for mechs nowadays, so it's neat to see this break away. But yeah, once again, those bulkier feet, which I really like to see. And I think these do a great job of like actually feeling mechanical. And finally, the Knuckles mech from the Sonic the Hedgehog theme. I think the shoes on this mech are actually really cool, how they call back to Knuckles' actual design. The legs, though, are probably my least favorite part of the build. There's some things I do like I like them covering up this part on the inside. It just helps it feel a little more detailed. But the giant gap in the center, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of. It's fine for posing, but it doesn't look the best. I don't have too much else to say on it, though. But now coming up to the cockpit area, I actually really like the way the Knuckles mech does it, because Knuckles is like out here and open and exposed. He's not like sitting in a separate seating chamber. Both can be cool, don't get me wrong, I don't think one option's better than the other, but the seating chamber idea is what we probably see more often in LEGO, so it's cool to get something like this again. It kind of reminds me of the mechs from the Avatar movie, just like the set we got in, what, 2022 it was at this point? But yeah, it actually looks really neat. I like how it juts out a little bit, has stud shooters for him to slam down on, and he has handlebars to hold on to too. And there's some really nice printed parts in this set. You've got this design similar to what's on Knuckles' shoes, and quilts coming off the mech, which are actually on mini ball joints, and it just makes for a very unique shape. Yeah, I genuinely think this looks really cool. The LEGO City Space mech is actually a very similar approach. You can see it's got a similar body design with the legs are forward and the arms are back. And while the pilot is strapped in here, he's very out in the open too. He's not as closed in as we're gonna see on the Marvel and Ninjago mechs. There's a cool extra joint here too where you can move the body backwards. Not sure why you'd really want to do this, but hey, I mean, it's an option you have. And there you can see what the seating area looks like with the minifigure removed. And this mech actually looks pretty good from the back too with these fuel tanks. And then of course coming to Ninjago, these are closed in, but these are probably my favorites. I guess spoiler alert, Ninjago is going to be my favorite. I love Ninjago. It's my favorite theme, but I also feel like they do the mechs a lot better than the other themes. Because I mean, come on, look how cool this looks. They use the SCCBS cockpit piece, and it just creates so much bulk in the chest, it looks amazing. There is also a joint at the waist where the mech's able to turn, and a good bit of room inside to actually see the minifigure. On the Cole mech, it's very similar. I think only one part's different. The arms are out a little bit further, but it uses the same basic build as Kai's. And Sora's is still similar, but it's more different than the other two. And this design is super sleek. I love the spikes coming off the sides. And you can see once again, there's how she sits in there. Back of these mechs isn't the prettiest we've ever seen, but also far from the ugliest. It is something that's at least worth pointing out, but that's probably the least important thing on a mech to me. And then the smaller J mech is also able to turn at the waist, but it uses like this clamshell cockpit piece. It's two parts, got the front part and the back part, and you can open it up instead of minifigure inside. And that's part that was originally used for LEGO Nexo Knights, but then it's also used in all the Marvel mechs, so we'll see it on the Marvel mechs in a moment. And I will say I'm not the biggest fan of that part because I feel like it discourages creativity, because even though all the bigger mechs still use the same piece for the front of the cockpit, the way you actually build the seating area can be different between them, while with this, Jay's seating area is going to look exactly the same as Venom's or War Machine's. All of that being said, I think a cockpit like this works for a mech of this scale, because the proportions on this entire thing are so tiny, it makes sense for the cockpit to be simple. And because everything is so simple, from the back it looks fine. That yellow right there maybe looks a little bit silly, but it's not bad. And then coming back to Marvel, yeah, as I said, the cockpits are my least favorite part. It is cool to get like a printed part on the front, but I just feel like the cockpit's way too tiny for how big the rest of the mech is. Like, these arms are super oversized. I wish there was a big bulky torso to go with it. I do like how it builds out around the back a little bit, and it does build some pieces up top, but yeah, even still, the torso feels very small for the arms and the legs. Just like the Ninjago mechs though, there is a swivel at the torso, which is good for posability. And the torso is also probably my biggest critique of the War Machine mech, because again, this is probably my favorite one they've done, but look how big the arms and the legs are. The torso is just tiny. Doesn't feel like it fits into me. I will say I do like these robot arm pieces at the top to sort of like strap them in. That adds like another dimension to the build. But yeah, I'm still not crazy about that part. And from the back of this one, you can see there's like a detachable power tank, I guess this is. That's cool that that slots in right there. I actually think the entire mech looks pretty good from the back. Might be the best looking one. So hey, I mean, I guess that's something for Marvel. And now the arms. I think the arms are fine. I like the stud shooter on the one side and how it has a pipe running into the back of the suit. And then there's also stud shooters in each of the hands. Definitely fits with War Machine's whole vibe. I will say I wish the hands were separate. The Ninjago mechs actually don't do that this time around either. But the hand being connected to the arm definitely leads to less posability options. But yeah, I don't know, it's all very gray, but I think it does well to represent War Machine mech armor. The Venom arms, however, though, actually rule. They do a great job of representing like Venom's powers here. It's got like the little tendrils coming off, and I love the bulk in this. That looks fantastic. The fingers too are super exaggerated, and I love the white claws in them. Obviously, this is Venom's aesthetic, but wow, I wish more of the Marvel mechs would like this, because this genuinely looks really great. And I will say, that's part of what hurts the legs so much, because the arms are super cool. So much detail, so much texture going on there. They're super bulky, and then the legs are thin and gray. We got the white and black up here. That's Venom's color scheme. Down here, it's mostly gray with like some slight black on it, but it just really feels like a huge disconnect to me. So yeah, the arms are fantastic. Like if I was to customize this mech, I'd probably leave those alone, but I feel like the rest of the build could be improved upon. The Ninjago mech, starting with Sora, obviously this one's very thin and open, because Sora's meant to be the more agile mech, not the bulkiest mech, but even still, there's a good bit of bulk to these arms. It feels like what a mech should have. It's bulky, but not armored, I guess. The mech has 3 individual fingers on the hand, and yes, they are connected to the hand, so just like the Marvel mech, the hands can't move individually. However, what can move individually are the weapons in the hands. So for example, Sora has the spinning pink blade, and that can be moved up and down a little bit to give the illusion of her hands actually moving. Kai's arms are more armored, and I love like the fiery electricity coming off of them. And once again, no motion on the hands, you can move the fingers, but the sword in Kai's hand can rotate while the arm is still. And Cole's arms are a little bit shorter. He only has a single finger in the end, but his elemental power is like channeling through his mech, and once again his weapon can move while his arms are still. The tiny J-mech, funnily enough, does have posable hands, and I think for a mech of this size that's great for play. Obviously the actual design's only a couple of parts, far from the best looking, but we also gotta remember this is the cheapest set of this wave. That being said, the city mech is only $1 more, and I think this does the arms a lot better. Of course, you have to keep in mind J-mech comes with 4 minifigures, this one only comes with 1, but the arms in this mech almost feel more realistic. And that's realistic, of course, in quotes, because mechs are not real, but this mech feels more based in reality as to what a mech actually could be if one was ever made in real life, rather than the more like cartoony anime-esque design of the Ninjago and Marvel mechs. But yeah, the arms connect on a mini ball joint, one hand has a claw on it, and that can grab onto an accessory or a minifigure or whatever, and the other arm's similar, but it has like a hammer instead, and this can be moved up and down to, I guess, break rocks. And then the arms of the Knuckle mech are actually one of my favorites. I do appreciate the use of the SCCBS joint here. I feel like that adds so much. I would like for more themes to embrace that part, but I especially love it combined with this piece up here, because that's a faceplate from like the buildable Marvel figures, but it's used as like one of Knuckles' muscles here to make his mech look super muscular, and I think it's the perfect combination. It makes the mech feel cartoony, but the armor piece makes it not overly cartoony, and the hands on this mech are on a separate ball joint, so you can move them around, so that leads to more posability. Speaking of posability, let's go over the overall posability of these mechs. Knuckles has a great range of motion on the feet, same thing on the legs. Arms are a little more limited, but honestly not by much. This has pretty much everything I would want, and the hands are fine, nothing too crazy, but it's everything it needs. Posability is definitely one of this mech's strengths. City mech I also think is really good, great range of motion forward on the foot, not as much back, but still more than you'd ever need. You could definitely have it like walking up something if you wanted. Same thing with the legs, like pretty solid. Have we seen mechs with more? Yeah, for sure. But again, if we see this as like a more realistic approach for a mech doesn't need like every little bit of articulation. Something like this is absolutely perfect. It's enough to pose, enough to move around, but it doesn't feel over the top. And then yeah, of course it's the same thing on the arms. No individually posable hands. I mean, I guess this can rotate, but I'm perfectly fine with that for a set like this. Coming to the small J-mech, posability is like unsurprisingly amazing. Because there's so few parts, there's not like really anything to get in the way. So yeah, it's really good, but there's so few parts used that like, come on, did you expect anything to get in the way? But yeah, this thing definitely is fun to move around and pose. On the bigger Ninjago mechs, posability is also really great. Forward and back motion on the feet's definitely the most limited one, but even that's not bad. For a mech of this size, I think that's perfectly fine, and side-to-side motion is huge. At the waist, though, you can see Sora's mech here, huge range of motion there. That's about everything you could possibly want. And same thing with the arms, like they're really not restricted at all on this mech. You can do whatever you want with them, and with the waist articulation in there too, it makes this build so much fun to display. Very similar thing with the Kai mech. Forward and back on the feet's pretty much exactly the same thing with the side-to-side. Legs connected to the waist is a little more limited because the Kai mech is a little bit more bulky, but even still, that's a really great range of motion. Like, I can't complain too much. And the arms are honestly probably about the same as Sora's, because you can see like the bulky armor piece slides out of the way if you want to move it in a way it can't normally move, so you can basically pose these arms however you want. The Cole mech's a little bit different from the other two. Forward and back motion on the feet's actually huge on this one. Side to side's not as much, but still pretty fantastic. And range of motion on the legs is massive as well. Kick them forward, kick them back. Like, there's really not any resistance there. We could swivel out the waist just like on the other two, but the limiting factor for posing on this mech comes in at the arms, because the bulky armor does get in the way a little bit. It is still lots of fun to pose this, but it's just not as free as the Sora or Kai mech. But I think that makes sense for a mech like this. It's meant to be bulkier, so it's not going to be as agile as the other two. And now finally we end things off with the Marvel mechs once again, and this is my least favorite part of the Marvel mechs. These are a pain to pose, because range of motion is just awful. Like, this is what it's like on the feet, and I know people always say, oh, pull the bar out a little bit more and it's better, and yeah, that's true, but if you're playing with this all the time, that bar is going to fall back in there whenever you apply pressure to it. So yeah, forward and back of the feet feet's super limited, side to side of the feet's super limited, see it falls off very easily. But you know what, limited feet is okay, like we saw in the Ninjago mechs, their feet are very limited. But it's not like the rest of the mechs are much better. Moving the legs feels awful. And like there is a decent range of motion there, but you also encounter a lot of resistance, because the leg's constantly colliding with other parts of the build and it makes it super easy to snap off. As such, it's just really not fun to pose this at the legs. Like there you go, you see the foot just snapped off when I was trying to pose it. Like I genuinely really don't like that. And then the arms, once again, are not much better. Like look at this. This is the entire range of motion and it just fell off. Like the bulk looks cool, don't get me wrong, and I want bulky mechs, but there's ways to do bulk where it doesn't limit posability, or if the posability is limited, it's not like super easy to break it off. Like take a look at the Kai mech. That one was bulky, but that still had a huge range of motion on the arms. What is this? This is nothing. And because the hand's not individually posable either, it's very difficult to actually pose this mech and make it look cool. Like for example, we have a stud shooter on the hand. What if War Machine wants to shoot at an enemy directly in front of him? Let's put the arm up and it's going to the side. Okay, well you can rotate the torso, I guess, and then turn War Machine's head, and that's how you aim directly in front of you, which that does look cool, don't get me wrong, but that's your only option to do that. And if you ever want to aim both stud shooters forward at once, nope, you have to have War Machine give you a hug instead, because that's how the hands go forward. Yeah, this posability is actually terrible. Like I don't have anything good to say about it. Like more posability is not always good. Like as we saw with the Cole mech, the arms are not the most posable, but they are at the very least sturdy. And while it's not as agile as some of the other mechs, it is still fun to pose. This one I do not find fun to pose at all. And the Venom mech is pretty much exactly the same when it comes to this. It uses the same connection system, so it moves in the same way. Because it's a little less bulky, it is a little bit easier to pose, but as I said, that hurts it in the looks department. Because War Machine looks amazing, it's the posability where it suffers. And of course, the part of Venom that looks really good, the arms, has that same issue with bulk, where it's just too much going on, and it's very easy to snap it off if you move it in the wrong way. The arms on Venom do feel a little bit better than War Machine when it comes to posability, but yeah, even still, it's not great. This is part of why I really want them to ditch these cockpit pieces, because number one, I don't think they look the best. They're fine, and I think for something small like the J-Mech, like, they're perfect for that. But for bigger mechs like this, they really need a bulkier torso. Because if they had a bulkier torso, they could extend the ball joints out a little bit, so they wouldn't be constantly colliding with the torso, and then you would have more options for posability. Because yeah, as it stands, this is super disappointing. I can't say I'm happy with it. And now finally, to wrap things up, let's talk about the value of these sets for the price, and whether or not I'd actually recommend that you get them. So first place, when it comes to value for price, of course, you guys know what I'm gonna say, it's Ninjago. It's incredible to me that the Sora and Cole mechs are only $5 more than the Marvel mechs, but feel like they're twice the size. And the Kai mech, yes, comes in a $30 set, but it's basically a $20 build because it does have a side build in that set too. And then the J-Mech, if that was a $10 set, that one came with a 1 minifigure, I'd tell you that's a bad value. But it doesn't come with 1 minifigure, it comes with 4 minifigures, 2 of which are exclusive, and the other 2 are army buildable characters. So if you don't care about figures and you just care about the actual mech, that's probably the worst one to get for the price, but if you do consider the minifigures, that one's one of the best. After that, in terms of value, I think I'd probably say the LEGO City one. I don't know, it is on a little bit of the smaller side, but you do get some small side builds in that set, the minifigure's super cool, and it's a very different type of mech, but I think it's actually very well done. And after that, third place, but a very close third place, I'd say third and second are probably interchangeable, would be the Marvel mechs. I know it sounds like I'm not a fan of the Marvel mechs, and I'll be honest, I'm not. Just when comparing them to Ninjago, they feel silly to me. But I will say the price for them isn't the worst. I think they'd be really great for $10, but you get a pretty good minifigure, and a nice size build for the price, not as good of a build as the Ninjago ones, but they do have a decent scale to them. And I also appreciate the Venom mech coming with a second minifigure this time around. That was one of my biggest criticisms last year, because the Marvel mechs went up to $15, but they still only had 1 minifigure. And to be fair, War Machine does only come with 1 minifigure, but you get a Miles Morales Spider-Man minifigure with the Venom mech. And then finally we have the Knuckles mech, because while it's far from the worst build here, it's honestly probably my second favorite, like, collection of mechs. I think in terms of actual builds, I'd say Ninjago, Sonic, City, and then Marvel. But the price on that one is, not good. You do get a side build on that set, which is something. But yeah, it's a $35 set, which is smaller than the 2 $20 Ninjago mechs. And the Kai mech is even closer, priced $30, and that comes with an even bigger side build, 2 more minifigures than the Knuckles mech, and it's $5 cheaper. So overall, which of these would I recommend you get? I mean, obviously it's up to you. Which themes do you care about? Which characters do you care about? Marvel and Sonic are the only licensed themes here, so of course their sets are going to be a little more expensive, but they are going to be licensed characters. But honestly, if you're not crazy about War Machine or Venom, I don't recommend those mechs. If you want to get just one, get War Machine. I think that's the better of the two, but I don't think either are fantastic. Ninjago mechs are really great. If you're someone who likes licensed sets and doesn't like unlicensed sets, obviously they won't be for you. But if you're looking for the best builds, that's what I'd say. If you're looking for the best value, that's what I'd say. City's a very fun one to pick up for cheap. In terms of build, it's definitely better than the J-Mech for only $1 more. But again, there's a whole minifigure selection, which we already talked about. And then the Knuckles mech is really great if you could stomach the price point. But yeah, the price point's not the best. I will say it's far from the worst price set I've ever seen, but especially when comparing it to the other mechs from this year, the price of that one feels pretty bad. But there you go. There is most of the small mechs that came out in January 2024. I don't think there's any that I missed. Again, I know there's the Monkey Kid ones, but those are a little bit bigger. If there's any others though that I'm not thinking of, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll make a follow-up video in the future. If you want to see my full thoughts on the Ninjago mechs or the Knuckles mech, I have 4 reviews of those up on my channel right now. And if you want to see my full thoughts on any of the other ones, let me know in the comments if you want to see a review, and I might get started working on that. Let me know what you think of these mechs in the comments, which ones are your favorites, which one are your least favorites. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!